From the moment my heels hit the cobblestone driveway of the lakeside resort, I knew something was off. There was a chill in the air that had nothing to do with the autumn breeze sweeping through Vermont. It wasn't the golden leaves drifting across the marble steps, or the faint scent of roses trailing from the garden archways that unsettled me. It was something colder, sharper. The same gnawing sensation I'd carried my whole life whenever I stood next to my sister Ashley. I came to her wedding expecting the bare minimum. I wasn't here to compete or to shine. I had no delusions of being the favorite daughter or the one people would talk about after the cake was cut. All I wanted was to smile for a few pictures, maybe hug my mom, and pretend just for one day that I belonged. God, how naive that was. A man in a tailored black suit opened my car door like I was some kind of celebrity, and for a split second I let myself feel welcomed, like maybe things would be different. Maybe all those years of being the shadow behind Ashley's spotlight were finally over. I had spent weeks choosing the right dress. A deep wine-red gown with a low back that made me feel human again after months of invisible wounds. It clung in the right places and gave me courage I didn't know I needed. I walked into the main hall, heart pounding but smile steady. I wasn't here to cause a scene. I wasn't here for drama. But drama, it seems, had already RSVP'd. The receptionist beamed at me, her hair slicked back like she worked on Wall Street, her clipboard tight in one hand. Name? Emily Carson, I said as calmly as I could. Her eyes skimmed the list, then paused. The smile faltered. A breath too long. A shift in her stance. You're placed in the hallway area, she said. I blinked. Sorry, where? Just outside the banquet hall. Near the coat check. There was no mistake. I saw the chart with my name printed in delicate gold script. Table H, hallway. Hallway. Like a goddamn extra in my own family's movie. Inside, chandeliers sparkled above Ashley's friends and co-workers. My parents were seated at the head table, of course. Mom in her designer gown, Dad in the tux she probably picked out for him. Every detail had been curated like some fairytale Pinterest board brought to life. And I was placed next to winter coats and forgotten umbrellas. At first I thought maybe there had been a last-minute mix-up. Maybe someone screwed up the seating chart. But then I saw Mom standing next to Ashley laughing, fixing her veil like nothing in the world was wrong. Like they hadn't just shoved me out of the picture. I approached carefully, trying to keep my voice level. Mom, can I talk to you for a second? She didn't even look at me. Not now, Emily. Can't you see we're busy? I waited. She sighed like I was a burden she'd outgrown. I've been seated in the hallway, I told her. She gave a lazy shrug. We had to prioritize close family. You know that. I am close family, I said, feeling my throat burn. She let out a soft, cold laugh. Oh, don't make a big deal out of this, Emily. And just like that, every memory of every birthday ignored. Every school play where I looked out into the audience and saw an empty seat. Every Christmas card with only Ashley's name signed in gold foil came crashing down. Ashley floated over, of course. Veil trailing like royalty. Smile fake as hell. I'm sure it was just a mix-up, she said, her tone drenched in syrup. Nobody meant anything by it. Weddings are hectic. Her eyes said otherwise. Her eyes screamed, you don't matter. You never did. I turned to Mom again, one last chance. One last plea for a sign that I wasn't crazy. That I wasn't imagining this exile. She just sighed. Don't ruin your sister's big day, Emily. You should be grateful you were invited. Grateful. Grateful to be seated by the coat rack. Grateful to be tolerated like a goddamn stray cat that wandered in off the street. Grateful to be invisible. And when my father John walked up, drink in hand, avoiding my gaze like always, all he could offer was, "It's just a seat, sweetheart. Don't make it a thing." That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not from pain but from clarity. They weren't going to change. They never saw me, never would. I could stand in a spotlight and they'd still say I was blocking Ashley's glow. So I turned around. Walked out. Slowly. Quietly. Like someone heading toward her own funeral. And what happened next? None of them saw coming. I sat there in that hallway longer than I care to admit, still holding the place card like it might bleed if I squeezed hard enough. Table H, hallway. It sounded like a cruel joke. Like a shitty code name for exile. I couldn't even hear the vows from where I was. Just muffled music, distant laughter, and the occasional clink of champagne glasses. Celebration happening just out of reach. Story of my life. Some cousin I barely recognized breezed by with a flute of Prosecco and gave me this half-sympathetic smile, like I was some stranger who had gotten lost. I wanted to scream at her. I'm not lost, I'm your goddamn family. But I didn't. I just looked away. Then something caught my eye, my reflection in the window beside the coat check. Startled me. I looked invisible, like a guest who had wandered in without an invite. My lipstick had faded. My eyes looked glassy. And that dress, the one I had been so proud of, clung to me now like it was ashamed to be seen with me. I don't know what made me do it, but I reached into my purse and pulled out an old Polaroid I'd shoved in there months ago. It was from a Christmas long ago. Ashley in the middle, grinning like she was being paid per tooth shown. Mom beside her, hand resting proudly on her shoulder. Me? I was off to the side, half cut off by the goddamn Christmas tree. It wasn't even a good photo, but it felt like proof. That's when I knew. I knew why they put me in the hallway. I knew why my name never showed up in Mom's little memory book. I knew why even today, even on Ashley's wedding day, I wasn't allowed inside. Because I didn't fit. I never had. The truth burned slow and sick in my gut. I was never meant to be part of this picture. I was just the spacing between the lines, the silence between the verses, the background noise. And then, like the devil knew I was spiraling, the door creaked open and I heard it. Emily. That voice. Fake sweet. Too light. Too perfect. Ashley. I turned and there she stood like she was floating. Veil still flawless, makeup barely smudged from whatever tears she'd probably practiced in the mirror. Her arms were crossed tight, but her smile. It was that same one she wore when she got me grounded for something she did. She looked down at me like I was a kicked dog on her wedding carpet. Are you upset? She asked, no actual concern in her voice. Because of the seating? I gave a laugh, short, dry, hollow. I'm not upset. I'm disappointed. Ashley tilted her head like she was auditioning for a soap opera. You're always so sensitive. It's just a seat, Emily. Who even cares? My jaw clenched. You know it's not about the seat. It's about how this family treats me. It's always been that way. She didn't flinch. Not even a blink. She stepped closer, voice dropping low so no one else would hear. You still showed up. Still wore the pretty dress. Still hoped someone might notice. You're desperate for their approval. It's sad. Something inside me snapped. No, Ashley, I said, voice sharp and even. What's sad is that you have to tear someone down just to feel loved. And for once she didn't have a comeback. Her eyes flickered. Just for a second. But it was enough. I stood. Walked past her without waiting for a reaction. My hands were shaking, but my spine had never felt straighter. They thought I'd sit quietly out there like a good little ghost. But not this time. Not anymore. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't some secret mastermind with a grand scheme to ruin Ashley's big day. I just needed air, needed space. From the suffocating stench of fake smiles and flower arrangements that cost more than my monthly rent. My heels echoed down the hall as I walked away from her. From the golden glow of the ballroom. From everything that once made me think, maybe this time will be different. I ended up by a side window, next to some ornate potted plant that looked more alive than I felt. The hallway was colder here. Quiet. I leaned against the glass, watching my own reflection tremble, and tried not to fall apart. And that's when I heard footsteps, steady, not rushed. A man's voice broke the silence. Emily. I turned, expecting maybe a distant cousin come to guilt-trip me back inside. But it wasn't. It was Brian, the groom. My soon-to-be ex-brother-in-law. If things went the way my gut was starting to predict. He looked out of place. Tie slightly loosened, hair mussed like he'd run his hands through it a dozen times in the last hour. He was holding a champagne flute, but he wasn't drinking it. Hey, I said, standing a little straighter, unsure why I suddenly felt like I was in trouble. He didn't smile. He just looked at me like I was a puzzle he hadn't realized existed. Seeing you sitting out here. It doesn't feel right. I let out a tired chuckle. Your family decided I'm not worthy of being inside. So here I am. With the coats. He stayed quiet for a second, then glanced over his shoulder. Mind if I sit? Be my guest, I muttered, gesturing to the stiff bench beside me. He lowered himself onto it slowly, like something was weighing down his shoulders. The silence between us stretched long and strange. Then he said, almost in a whisper, "Has Ashley ever said anything weird about me?" I blinked. Weird? Like manipulative? Or shady? Anything that made you think something wasn't right? I stared at him. Was he serious? This was the groom, asking me, the outcast, if his new wife was lying to him? "Are you asking if I've heard her badmouth you?" I asked carefully. "Not just badmouth," he said, pulling out his phone. "There's this feeling I've had lately, like she's trying to mold me into someone, like I'm part of some checklist. Smile, propose, wedding, house, baby. But none of it feels real anymore. Not with her." Something in my chest twisted. I thought of all the times Ashley had rolled her eyes at Brian behind his back. The way she called him boring when she thought no one was listening. The way she practiced crying in front of a mirror like she was prepping for a goddamn Oscar. And for the first time that day, I didn't feel small. I felt necessary. "You might want to brace yourself," I said slowly, "because I don't think you really know who you married." Before he could respond, another voice cut through the silence. "And if you're still unsure," it said sharp and cool, "maybe your mother can help make things clear." We both turned. Margaret Carter stood at the end of the hall, a vision in navy blue and steel resolve. She held a phone in one hand, her expression unreadable. Brian stood up immediately. "Mom." Margaret walked over and handed him the phone without a word. He swiped. His eyes scanned the screen, brow furrowing. And then I saw it, the moment realization hit him like a truck. His face went pale. His hands trembled. She told her best friend she was training me to be the perfect husband." His voice cracked. "She said I was predictable. That as long as she stayed sweet in front of you, this house would be hers." Margaret's voice was calm but deadly. "There are more. She texted her stylist that after the wedding, she'd make you dependent and take everything." That's a direct quote. I watched Brian's whole body cave in on itself, like someone had cut the strings. Margaret looked at me then. "Emily, thank you for not turning away." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My pulse was thunder in my ears. For years I'd screamed into a void that Ashley wasn't the perfect daughter everyone worshipped, and no one listened. But now the truth wasn't a whisper. It was a goddamn bomb. Brian didn't speak. He just stood there, staring at the screen in his hand like it was glowing with the ruins of everything he thought his life was about to become. I sat frozen watching this man unravel. Not from heartbreak, but from betrayal so layered and calculated, it could have been scripted by Netflix. He finally sank onto the bench beside me, burying his face in his hands. The groom, on his wedding day, broke him before the first dance. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't the comfort type. Hell, I wasn't even supposed to be in this moment. I was the one they shoved in the hallway like unwanted luggage. But there I was, suddenly more trusted than the woman he'd just married. Margaret stood over him, silent but powerful. Her hand rested on his shoulder, not soft but firm, like an anchor. Like a mother who just realized her son was about to be drowned by a woman in white lace and lies. I swallowed hard, heart pounding. "So, what are you going to do?" Brian looked up. His face wasn't sad anymore. It was clear, cold, focused. "She lied to everyone," he muttered. "But worse, she thought she could lie forever." Margaret stepped forward. "We're not sweeping this under the rug, Brian. Not like they did." She glanced at me when she said it, and I knew exactly what she meant. My family, the Carsons, masters of pretending, champions of denial. Nothing ever happened in our house. Unless it was about Ashley. Then it was a goddamn national holiday. Brian stood, slid his phone into his pocket, and took a deep breath. "We're ending this. Today." "Wait," I said quickly. "Like today? He nodded. "She wants a storybook wedding. Let's give her an ending she'll never forget." And that's how I found myself walking behind the groom and his mother, heading toward a private conference room upstairs, like we were characters in some courtroom drama. The moment felt unreal. My heels clicked over the marble floor, but I barely felt them. My mind was spinning, emotions battling each other like a damn cage match. I had dreamed about the day anyone, would finally call Ashley out. But now that it was happening, it felt terrifying. The room was quiet. Just a long polished table, leather chairs, and too much air between us. Brian sat at the head, Margaret beside him. I sat to the right, trying not to wring my hands like some nervous witness. A few minutes later the door opened. Ashley walked in, and so did my mother. Linda looked confused, like someone had pulled her away from a spa treatment. But Ashley, she wasn't confused. She was calculating. Her bridal train swished across the floor like a snake. Her smile was tense. Fake. But her eyes? Nervous. "What's going on?" she asked, voice pitched too high like she was trying to keep control. Brian stood. Calm. Cool. Deadly. He pulled out a white envelope from his suit pocket and placed it on the table. "You know what this is?" he asked. Ashley narrowed her eyes. Didn't answer. "Petition to annul the marriage," Brian said. "And in case you care, I've already signed it." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. My mom gasped like someone had slapped her. Ashley went pale. "You're joking, right?" she said, forcing a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Margaret stepped in, voice sharp as glass. "We read everything, Ashley. Every message. Every plan. Every disgusting little comment you made about my son and this family." Ashley spun toward me like a wild animal cornered. "You did this," she hissed. "You've always wanted to ruin me. Always been jealous. You're just bitter because you're invisible." I stood slowly, meeting her eyes with more strength than I'd ever known I had. "No," I said. "You did this to yourself." Linda, our mother, finally looked at Ashley. But not with pride. Not with love. With something new. Something I never thought I'd see in her face. Regret. "Ashley," she said softly, "I can't defend you anymore." Ashley's lip trembled. She looked at each of us, desperate for anyone to stand by her. But no one moved. Not even Mom. Not this time. And for the first time in her perfect little life, Ashley was alone. Ashley didn't speak. For the first time in her glittering, manicured, spotlight-soaked life, she had nothing to say. Her mouth opened but no words came out, just a choked breath. Her eyes bounced from face to face like she was looking for an escape route, a lifeline, a script. But this wasn't a rehearsal. This was reality, baby. And the curtain had just dropped. She turned on me, eyes wild. "You always wanted to take me down," she hissed, her voice cracking at the edges. "You never let me have one peaceful moment, did you? You've always been jealous." I didn't flinch. There was nothing left to defend. I just stared at her, calm. Empty. Done. And maybe that pissed her off more than any insult I could have thrown. She lunged toward me. Heels clicking like gunshots on the tile, veil flying behind her like the ghost of the bride she'd wanted to be. But she didn't make it far. A firm arm slid between us. "Margaret." "That's enough," she said, voice low and lethal. Ashley froze. Margaret didn't even raise her voice, but damn, she didn't have to. She had that steel in her spine kind of presence. The kind that made people listen. "Get out of my way," Ashley snapped. "You've caused enough chaos," Margaret said. "If I let you go one more step, that would be on me." Ashley looked around again, more desperate now. Like a queen realizing her crown was fake, her castle made of glass, and every window had shattered. No one came to her defense. Not Brian. Not Linda. Not even John, who had once let Ashley walk all over him like he was part of the carpet. So she did the only thing left in her broken bag of tricks. She ran, clattering down the hallway, fists clenched at her sides, her perfect white gown trailing behind her like a storm cloud. She burst through the ballroom doors like a hurricane hitting a wedding planner's worst nightmare. And we followed. Oh, we followed. The doors opened wide, and in we walked, me, Brian, Margaret, my parents, into a room of hundreds of guests sipping champagne and laughing under chandeliers, completely unaware that the bride had detonated her own damn wedding. But the music stopped. The talking stopped. Every head turned. And there she stood in the center of it all. Makeup smudged. Chest heaving. Hair falling out of its perfect updo. Eyes burning with rage. "You think you can humiliate me like this?" Ashley screamed, her voice echoing through the room like a fire alarm. "I gave everything for today. I planned every detail. And now over a few texts, a few fucking words, you're going to destroy me." No one answered. Brian stepped forward, his voice cold, steady. No one destroyed you, Ashley. You did that yourself. Ashley's breath caught. Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't the cute, bridal tears she probably rehearsed in the mirror. They were ugly. Real. She spun to me again, eyes wide and frantic. Mary's always been jealous, always trying to drag me down. I took one step forward. My voice was steady, clear. I don't need to drag anyone down. The truth carries its own weight. And in that moment, every guest in that room saw it. Saw her. Not the charming Ashley from the Save the Date cards. Not the glowing Instagram bride. The real one. And for the first time, she knew it. You can't leave me, she gasped, turning to Brian. I'm your wife. We made vows. Brian didn't even blink. He pulled that same white envelope from his jacket pocket and held it up like a gavel. This is the annulment contract, he said, calm as hell. And I signed it. Boom. Mic drop. And just like that, the center of the universe collapsed under her own gravity. Ashley stood there, alone in her fairy tale ballroom, surrounded by flowers and friends she couldn't manipulate anymore. And I stood taller than I ever had in my life. A week later, I woke up in my quiet Boston apartment. No silk linens. No chandeliers. No whispers behind champagne flutes. Just the hum of my old fridge and the sound of rain tapping against my window. Peaceful. Real. There were no wedding favors left behind on my counter. No framed photo of the bride and groom. The only proof that Ashley's fairy tale had burned to the ground was in my call log. 8 missed calls from Mom. 9 if you count the one from last night that I ignored while brushing my teeth. She'd left voicemails. Rambling ones. I didn't know, she said in one. I didn't think it was that bad. Bullshit. I knew what those voicemails were. Panic wrapped in guilt, stitched with just enough motherly concern to seem noble. But it wasn't guilt for what she'd done to me. It was shame. Embarrassment. The picture-perfect mask she glued onto our family had finally cracked. And the world saw what was underneath. Later that day, my phone buzzed with a new message. From Mom. I know you're angry. I can't change the past. But I want to see you. Just us. Dinner? Please. I stared at that message longer than I should have. A few years ago, I would have jumped at it. Thrown on a nice dress. Showed up on time. Ordered something polite and smiled through awkward small talk, hoping she'd say something nice. Even just one sentence. Like, I'm proud of you, Emily. Or you've always mattered to me. But that girl, she didn't live here anymore. I set my phone down. No reply. No anger. Just silence. Because sometimes silence isn't emptiness, it's freedom. That evening I walked along the Charles River, letting the wind tangle my hair. The city glowed in that perfect dusky way it does when the sun forgets it's supposed to be setting. Lights shimmered across the water like 1,000 tiny exits from the life I used to live. I sat on a stone bench by the railing and pulled out an old photo from my wallet. It was one of those holiday shots. Ashley in the middle, Mom glowing beside her, hand on her shoulder. And me? I was barely in frame, half covered by a damn Christmas tree. I stared at it for a moment, not with pain, not with anger, just clarity. Then I folded it neatly and slipped it back into my purse, not to hold on to it but to let it go. That night, I pulled the dusty family photo album from my shelf. I didn't burn it, didn't rip it apart. I just closed it, put it in a box and set it on top of the wardrobe where it couldn't reach me anymore. That chapter was over, and I didn't need to read it again. The next morning, I did something I'd been putting off for years. I booked a trip to Maine. Solo. No excuses. No guilt. No what if someone needs me that weekend. Just me. And for the first time that felt like enough. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need a place at the head table. And I damn sure didn't need anyone's approval to know I had value. I had found it. Not in my family's version of who I should be, but in who I chose to become the moment I walked away. Because family might be where you come from, but it's not always where you belong. And sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is leave the room they told you to stay silent in. A few days after booking the trip, my phone lit up again. This time it wasn't Mom. It was Dad. I stared at the screen for a beat. Dad never called. Hell, Dad barely spoke. His version of emotional vulnerability was grunting in my general direction. But something told me this time was different. I picked up. Not because I needed to hear him out, but because I knew if he was calling it mattered. "Emily," he said, his voice scratchy and slower than I remembered. "I'm not good with words. You know that." I didn't say anything. I just listened. "But that day when you spoke up, when your mom saw Ashley for who she really is, I think that was the first time in her life she understood how alone you've been." Silence. Then he added quietly, almost like it hurt to admit, "I was wrong." For simple words. But they cracked something open in me. Not pain, not regret. Just peace. "I know it doesn't fix anything," he said. "But I want you to know it." I closed my eyes, let the words settle in my chest. Not like a bandage. More like a closing door. "Thank you, Dad," I said. "But I don't need an apology anymore. I just need freedom." And he didn't argue. He didn't beg or justify or say, "But we tried our best." He just said, "Okay." And that was enough. That night I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even think about Ashley. Not really. I poured a glass of wine, sat on the fire escape, and let the city hum around me. Somewhere below, a car alarm was going off. A couple was laughing too loudly. A dog barked like it was trying to tell the whole block its life story. It was chaotic. It was imperfect. And for the first time it felt like home. I didn't need their forgiveness. Didn't need a seat inside their broken illusion of a perfect family. Because I had found something better than approval. I had found myself. And maybe that sounds cheesy. Maybe it sounds like something you'd read on a coffee mug in a gift shop in Maine. But I swear to God it's true. I used to believe that being strong meant staying. Taking the hits. Smiling through the pain. Enduring. But now I know the real strength comes from walking away. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. But in truth. I'm not the forgotten sister anymore. I'm not the girl in the hallway. I'm not a ghost at the table. I'm Emily Carson. And I finally got up from the seat they gave me, so I could build a table of my own.